So here are some fast facts about the New York Times list and the USA Today list. I've never hit the Wall Street Journal list, so I'm not going to include that. I've also never, as best I know, hit a list in another country. So I'm just talking about the USA Today and the New York Times list. So the first fact you need to know is that they don't have the same reporting week. Bestseller lists, they reflect sales in one 7-day period, and the USA Today reporting period is Monday to Sunday, and the New York Times reporting period is Sunday to Saturday. So sometimes you might see a bestseller release on a Monday instead of the traditional Tuesday. Now, traditional Tuesday releases, they line up with the USA Today list because pre-orders dump into the day before. That's just how the retailers work, and so they report them as the bulk of them as sales from the day before, which is actually the second point on my list, the fast fact. So the New York Times list, if you release on a Monday, all of your pre-orders will dump in on the Sunday, the USA Today list, they'll dump in onto the Sunday and count in the previous week. So sometimes, particularly in indie circles, you will see somebody who has a ton of pre-orders release on a Monday, and they hit the list for the previous week on the strength of their pre-orders alone. So if you are hoping that between pre-orders and your release week sales, you might be in that window, you want to make sure that you release the day after the reporting period begins so that your pre-orders dump in the day before. Fact number 3. The data is reported and tabulated manually, and human error can mean that books get left off the list. Also, there is rumored to be a threshold below which a retailer will not report. So sometimes, like for example, I've heard you have to get 500 sales on Kobo in order for Kobo to report your sales to USA Today or New York Times. I don't know if that's true or not. Because nobody ever shares numbers, right? So everything anybody knows, me or anybody else guessing at what goes into a list, everything we know is a guess. I don't know if I believe that 500 based on different hits that I've had compared to other people's total sales, because sometimes in the indie circles people share numbers. But I do think that there's probably a threshold. I think it's probably different for every retailer because it depends on how long of a list they want to make and hand in to those newspapers. All right. So the other thing is that like recently I saw on Twitter that there was quite a kerfuffle, fair kerfuffle about the fact that the New York Times used to report Book of the Month sales, and now they're no longer doing that, which is how a lot of publishers, they put a lot of marketing effort into that to distribute books that way, and then those books didn't hit the list when they were kind of expected to. And that's the thing, particularly as an indie, you can go in with a plan, and that plan can get how do I say that? Shot out of the water. At some point I should do a video about how I had shingles and it completely messed up my spoken vocabulary for the rest of my life. Anyway, so that plane can get shot out of the water because the reporting, like it's a newspaper, the New York Times, the USA Today, it's up to them. It's their list. It's not one that we all like agreed upon in some sort of egalitarian democratic way. It's their proprietary list, and they can choose what goes onto it, what goes into it. And it's very frustrating that you can make a plan based on how they were doing it one way, and then it all changes, and then you don't get to do it that way anymore. Very frustrating. Number 4, the lists are announced each Wednesday. So USA Today puts their list on their website. Every week it's at a slightly different time. First, they usually populate the searchable database, which exists always. You can search my name and see how many times I've hit the list. And you can also download a PDF, and sometimes the searchable database is updated before the PDF, and sometimes it's the other way around. It used to be always in the afternoon, and then lately I've been seeing it updated kind of mid-morning, so it really kind of depends, but it's on Wednesday. And it gets some of those, I think it's the top 50, get published in the paper either the Thursday or in the weekend. I don't know, because I don't live somewhere where the USA Today is distributed in print, so I don't care about that part. The New York Times list is a part of those lists are published in the paper and or their magazine, but it's circulated in just among industry professionals via PDF late Wednesday night and talked about kind of on as if it's released on Thursday, but it's also a Wednesday release. Okay, and last, the number of books to hit, because it varies week to week. It varies on how many books you have at those different retailers, as I talked about before. But as like a rough estimate, you could plan on it taking about 7,000 units sold between Monday and Sunday to hit the USA Today list, maybe 10,000 or 15,000 to get into that top 50, and 25,000 units between Sunday and Saturday to hit the New York Times combined ebook paperback list. So the New York Times has a whole bunch of different lists actually, and really as an indie who primarily sells ebooks, the only list we are eligible for is that combined list, because I think all of the other ones are paperback, and so you'd have to sell a hell of a lot of paperback copies in a single week, which is not really something we have access to unless you also have a distribution partner. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, remember there's a blog post that has these 5 fast facts on my blog, and that's linked in the description. You can subscribe, like, and comment, of course, if you have any questions. Also, like, my data is skewed to my perspective, like anything that anybody's ever going to talk about on this subject. So, if you have very different data, please share it in the comments. That's helpful to everybody, and I encourage that.